Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing a high-level guide on the ADS movement velocity of every single gun on Apex Legends from fastest to slowest. Now I'm going to have a document down in the description down below where we talk about all of this in order, and you can see the numerical values. I'm going to cover them very high level in this video for you today. We're going to go from fastest to slowest. Now let's talk about a very quick tip when we're talking about why is this even important? Why are we covering this? Well, this really makes the difference between whenever you ADS versus when you hip fire. So when we have the Spitfire, we notice that you can duck and weave and dodge at 173.5 movement velocity. Now this is a movement velocity for every single gun on Apex Legends. Again, that is for every single gun on Apex Legends. This does not matter what sight you put on the weapon afterwards whenever you ADS. Your movement velocity always stays the same. So I'm highlighting the Spitfire just because even though it's got its nerf, it's still important to realize the power that it still has behind it and why it's so frustrating to deal with at close range encounters. Just because whenever you're hit firing, you still have that movement velocity, which is the same across every gun. Now, whenever you ADS, the movement velocity changes. Realize that this has gone down to 69.4 movement velocity. Now, if I remove the 3x on this, realize that the sight, just a myth bust, is still at 69.4 movement velocity. So it does not change. It does not matter what sight you put on the weapon. It's always the same. So 1x, 69.4, 2x, 69.4. So now let us discuss the difference in terms of all the different velocities of these weapons. Now the interesting thing is the fastest guns in the game happen to be also some of the, not necessarily the best guns. So the Mozambique and the P2020. We talked about 173.5 moving left and right, and you ADS, it's the exact same. So what is the benefit here? Well, whenever you ADS, knowing that you have that same movement, speed, and velocity, you definitely have the ability to go for more headshots, which can definitely knock out a bit more damage. So for these guns, that is definitely very beneficial. Now, the most powerful weapon in this set of why you don't necessarily have to hip fire every single wingman shot and why it's beneficial to ADS and get for that extra accuracy is that this is also at 173.5. So you definitely have that extra benefit of utilizing the wingman, but as we get a little bit slower here, we can pull out the RE45, and we notice that it starts to dip. Now we're at 164.82. So pretty interesting there. Now when we go to the shotguns, they're all at a pretty similar value and number. So let's take a look at those. Even though it's definitely better to hip fire most of the shotguns, especially whenever you're point blank range, when you ADS, of course, you get the choke on the Peacekeeper, which is at 156.15. We pull out the EVA 8. This is also a similar experience at 156.15. And then we pull out the Mastiff, the same exact value. So you see the trend. This is not the case for all the guns, but most guns within a similar category do fall under the same numerical values. So this is important to highlight, especially whenever you're pushing and building, noting which weapons you're utilizing and whenever you're pushing. Now, most of the SMGs all have very similar ADS value as well, so I'm going to highlight that here for you guys. So we look at the Bolt, we see 147 point, and it kind of goes up and down, 448, 47. It's pretty close, and especially whenever you go up and down, it kind of teeters back and forth there. But also the R99 at 147.48, so very similar. And also look at the alternator. Boom, we have a similar experience here, 147.48. Now, the care package weapon, which is the Prowler, I know that as a heavy weapon, also has a similar numerical value. So when you're pushing with an SMG, they're all 147 point, and you notice that the number goes back and forth between 48 and 47. Here is a fascinating fact, which is why the bow check bow can be very difficult to counter. So when you're moving, base, ADS, 147.48. Interesting, right? I find that fascinating because it helps you whenever you're cutting corners. Now, whenever you pull back at 86.75, which is very similar to your Hemlock, Flatline, L-Star, and all those other guns, which we're going to highlight in just a moment, which is a great segue as we talk about those weapons that you will utilize as well on Apex Legends. So let's cover that. Let's break that down real quick. So when we look at a Flatline, its movement is 86.75. This is applicable as well to the Havoc, the L-Star, when we pull out the L-Star, ADS. Now, you're not necessarily going to be using these all the time in that regard, so 86.75. This is why when you're up close and personal, you'll kind of utilize the hip fire to benefit, but you do have the ADS, and remember from my prior video based on velocity speeds, the difference that it makes. I feel like not a lot of people are focusing on this, and it's just good to have in the back of your mind, especially when you're trying to land your shots. If you switch from a wingman, how jarring the difference between the weapons can be if you're kind of ADS and taking shots and you instantly switch and you ADS, and how much slower you're going to be, and how much more of a target and how much, well, easier you're going to be to really hit. That's really important to highlight. This is also similar for the R301. The R301 has a similar speed as well as 86.75. So pretty interesting there. Now when we switch over to the 3030 repeater as well as a G7 Scout, these values, and I did a video on it whenever they first came out, got buffed. They used to be much slower. They actually used to be the speed of a normal sniper, but now they're at 73.74. So you see that each of them are the same. Even if you put a 2x, 3x, it's always the same. So always the same. Always, always, always the same. The same thing, actually, the triple take used to be much slower, but I think when they put in the care package, I do not remember the exact value before, but it's also at 73.74. So now when we look at the Devotion and the Spitfire like we did initially, you saw it was at 69.4, good number. Devotion as well is a similar experience regardless of the site. Again, just a reminder in terms of Mythbuster when you're watching this, let's just remember this when you're taking positioning. Remember, positioning is always key. Another quick little tip there. Now when we look at the Kraber and we look at the snipers, you're going to notice just how much slower they are. But also realize when you're moving so slow, and let's say you have the high ground, how much easier you may be able to hit because you are barely moving. So whenever ADS, you see 60.73. Definitely a lot slower. When you pull out every single sniper here, you'll notice it is a very similar experience regardless. 60.74, I put a 6x scope on it. It does not change. So same thing with the charge rifle. 60.773, 74 kind of goes back and forth sometimes, not really. And there we go. That's all the values that you see from ADS from fastest to slowest. So remember the takeaway. Why the heck is this information important? Well, it's very important because when you're pushing a building, you definitely want to have an SMG into your ADS. What guns are going to be easier to dodge shots? You're going to have a much easier time whenever you're moving into a building using a Volt versus a longbow. So let's showcase a very fast example of what that looks like. So whenever I breach a building here, even though we all move at 73.5, we move around the corner at 173.5, that's fine, but whenever you ADS, realize whenever you're taking angles and keeping the velocity movement up and down whenever it slows down and whenever it keeps speeding up. So you'll have an easier time dodging and being harder to hit versus somebody who's like point blank trying to hit you with a sniper and they're barely moving, and how much more difficult that is to hit. So hopefully all these tips help you out. Knowledge is power. This is going to just help you necessarily in the long run whenever you're pushing a building and you ADS with a Spitfire and realize that you're just a sitting duck, and the power that it actually has and what is the benefit, and kind of myth bust a few things. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe in this video. I really appreciate all of you guys for watching. The document will be in the description down below for a very high level as a reference point, or even just seeing the values that you see on screen. I had them on the upper left so you can see it. That's where I document. I went painstakingly through all of these guns and looked at them, document all the numbers so you guys have them there for you guys to check out. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.